Welcome, everybody. I'm very honored, happy, and excited to have Zukiswa Wanner as our guest. This is the first installment of our interview series, Black, Brown, Yellow, White. And our guest, like I said, is Zukiswa Wanner, acclaimed South African, Zimbabwean author, editor, publisher. And now, if you don't mind, I'll just give a brief intro from what I know about you. So let me introduce. Okay. So let me introduce our guest a bit more fully. Zukiswa Wanner was born in Zambia, to a Zimbabwean mother and a South African father. She authored novels like The Madams, the first one in 2006, then Behind Every Successful Man in 2008, Man of the South, which I'm presently reading. It's a beautiful novel in 2010. And with the latter was nominated for the 2010 Commonwealth Book Prize for Best Book of African Region, and it won the South African Literary Award. Her novel, London, Cape Town, Joburg, was published in 2014, and it won the K. Sello Duiker Prize. Wanner's work includes contributions to and coordination of anthologies such as Story, Story, Come in 2018, and Waterbirds on Lakeshore, an anthology of African young adult fiction published in 2019. In Nairobi, I believe you initiated and curated a 3-year artistic encounter at the Goethe Institute and coordinated the Sub-Sahara Afro Young Adult Project. So many different hats which you are wearing. And also, I believe you are the founder of Paivapo Publishers. I was thinking maybe as a first question or first introduction we could do is, I know it's very difficult, but that you give us like a little, like almost like a little, little highlight show of your life, or a little overview of like the most important stations in your life, because I think for the viewers it would be nice to get a bit of a better idea.
Yay, that's hard.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Maybe the things which really moved you and directed you, it's just to get the kind of flavor. Yeah.
All right. Okay. I think what I could just highlight is I all the stuff that you've mentioned about where I was born, and stuff, and then move forwards perhaps I went to school I went to university in Hawaii,
Oh, yeah.
and yeah, and being in Hawaii like was very insightful because everybody thinks of Hawaii as a holiday destination, but when you're actually there, you realize what settler colonialism can do. And
Yeah.
coming from countries that had settler colonialism, it's very enlightening. So it was, we were better off. We're not like Hawaiians. Hawaiians had like, I think it was 12% who are still, remaining in the US. And anytime they try to do a Native Hawaiian thing, there's always somebody who's going to be like, oh, that's exclusionary and stuff, using the US policy and stuff. So that those things. And it was like seeing social injustice in play. And so that's one. And then I went to and I left Hawaii, very interestingly enough. I'd been there for a while. I left Hawaii in just after 9/11.
Yeah.
And I left after 9/11 because I had seen there were young men and young women, old men and old women who would be every morning, they would be standing at the traffic lights and they'd be like, what God bless America, God bless America, God bless
Yes.
America, waving the American flag. And there were, if you know anything about Hawaii, a large number of their population is actually Asian. But these were old women and old men who were Japanese, and they'd been in encampment camps
Yeah, in the
set up
West Coast also.
during the First World War. So
Yeah.
that was their memory, and it felt like they needed to prove that they were loyal to the country, you know?
So it's almost an over-integration.
Yeah, I went to the UK, and while I was there, you know, I remember that was the big time of the protests against the Iraq war. I remember going to the march, and then my dad died, and I came home for the funeral. And when I came home to South Africa, I remember thinking to myself, God, why am I in the UK? Why am I anywhere? And I went back to the UK, and a week after I'd returned, I bought my ticket back to South Africa.
Okay.
And it was a Wednesday, and I went and I told my boss, I said, listen, I'm going back to South Africa. And they say to me, has somebody else in your family died? And I said, no, I'm going back because I'm going back to stay. And they say to me, you know, you need to work 1 month's notice. And I said, how about you notice that I'm not around for a month? You know? and I flew back to SA, and it was a bit foolhardy for me, but foolhardiness is something that I seem to do very well. It was foolhardy for me because I came back, and when I returned, I didn't have a job. I applied and eventually I found a job with Afkumalo. And it was very coincidental because I had volunteered for for an event. You know, I'd volunteered for something, and this was an organization that looked after HIV orphans and tried to get them IDs and stuff so they could go to school. And so the woman who was doing it was in my neighborhood. She stayed close to my grandmother. So I said, Sis Carol, how can we help? And she said to me, oh, I need this proposals done. I need this and this. And that's when I met Alf Kumalo. And I said to Alf, it's good to see you, Alf. Can I please learn something about photography from you? How do I learn? And he said to me, actually, as a matter of fact, I have a photography school. And come through, it's in Diepkloof, you know, because this was Soweto. And I went through, and when I went through, it was interesting because I went with my portfolio for journalism portfolio. And the whole thing about my getting into photography was I thought that I could pad my portfolio so that I would be able to say to people, okay, I'm also a photographer in addition to being a journalist. Give me a job.
You have all the full skill set of the journalist.
And when can I do this landscape?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Okay. And when Alf asked me, you know, so when I got there, when I got out, I was talking to one of the teachers, and when I got out, one of the teachers said to me, you know, it's why the coordinator actually, because they're a funder, they said, I know you came here to learn photography, but we've looked at your portfolio and we need a PR person for this place, you know. So we need someone who pretty much an all go-to person who does whatever. And I said, I'm happy to do it, you know. So because I was also happy to finally get a paid job. And so I started working there, but there were so few people coming through Temba, despite the amazing photography that that Alf has. Alf Kumalo was Alf Kumalo was one of the first people to have a photograph of Nelson Mandela's mom.
Oh,
He's the
okay.
only person to have a photograph of Nelson Mandela's mom. You know, Alf Kumalo
had the presence to take a picture of her. To
he always took
contextualize
pictures.
that it's not just this iconic singular monolith of a person, but there are others around him.
Alf Kumalo has a photograph of a whole bunch of people. He's got a photograph of Tambo together with the late first leader of the ANC. You know, he's got not Mandela, but you know, and he's got a photograph of he's got a photograph of Miriam Makeba when she first got into the US.
Wow.
You know, she went to buy shoes, and she went to buy shoes, and there was a white man in the shoe shop who was.
This was in the 50s. No, 60s.
Yeah, he was putting on a shoe.
41 even,
But he was working in this place, and it was this beautiful moment where, for Miriam Makeba, it was like mind-blowing, because it was like, wow, a white man even has a job where he can put a shoe on my foot. You know what I mean? You know, he had photos with like a whole brilliant people. But back to my story. So while I was there, then I had you know, I had somebody came through, and it was somebody in the Netherlands, a late writer, and he said to me, and we started chatting, and you know, the guy who wrote what's the book called? Mating Birds.
Yeah.
So he came through, and he said to me, and then afterwards he gave me his email address. He said, get in touch with me, and I would send him emails every now and again. And every now and again, I would send him pieces that were like, you know, creative nonfiction essays, because I was like, oh, you know, I felt like, oh, okay, maybe he can tell me where to go and stuff. And he sent me an email, and he said to me, you really should consider writing fiction, right? And I said, okay, cool. And I didn't say cool. I said to him, I'm too much of a realist to write fiction. And he said, that's such rubbish. And then, you know, you have the essay. I've talked about this. And he then came to South Africa, and he did an event. And while I was there, I met Moeletsi Mbeki, and it's like, Moeletsi is a publishing company. Send him your stuff. I sent Moeletsi my stuff. And then he said to me, after Moeletsi read it, he said to me, you really should consider writing fiction. And so I sent him some pieces, and then he said, yeah, no, you should consider writing fiction. And so I really wrote the first draft of the Madams. And the reason why, and at that time I'd left Al, but now I was working for civil society. I was working for this. And the reason I left Civicus is I was like, okay, my book has come out. I really believe in literature. I believe in writing. And I want to make it, let me give a go of it for like 5 years and see how it works. Because we don't take art as a profession seriously. And I want to be that person who takes it seriously. I want to monetize it. And yeah, obviously there are always struggles. My son is in his last year of A levels, and I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
pay school fees in a week type of
Yeah.
thing, right? Yeah, but I've somehow managed to make it so that he went to his last year of high
Yeah.
school.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. And
I don't know
did
if I'll
you?
make this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a joke that everything I do is
Mm-hmm.
literature adjacent. So
Yeah.
sometimes it might be like curating stuff, but it needs to be literature.
Yeah.
You are in you're in Switzerland. I don't know whether you managed to get to see the exhibition that I put up in Zurich.
But for you, this kind of cross-fertilization of the arts is something you aim for.
What I've done consistently, my big thing has been, let's see how art can talk to each other,
Yeah.
you know. And so as far as I'm concerned, I'm always literature adjacent, because a major point for me is literature should always be there, because it always starts with a word.
Yeah. I was thinking about your essay because it seemed to me in one of the essay that you are a bit discontent, unhappy with the way, literature is being promoted or funded, in South Africa, that it's not being given maybe quite so much attention like music and I think music and the movies. I'm not sure anymore which art forms. So this competitiveness, you don't see it as an issue, that there's kind of a competition also between these different art forms for audience, for viewership, for funding, etc.
Listen, I understand that a lot of people are visual, in fact, a couple of my books have been adapted into film, you know
Mm,
or they're in progress to being made into film. Uh, but I do also understand that, you know, I'm not the story.
yes.
The story is what I write. And it's
Yeah.
important to that. And because I'm not the story and the story is what I write, a lot of people will not identify me when I'm walking in South Africa. You know, they won't know my name unless somebody says, but they also might not even know what book I've written and so forth and so on. And
Mm,
and that's okay, you know, because I'm not a story.
yeah.
Uh, but where the failure is with I think Department of Arts and Culture, and I've gone to quite a few imbizos with the ministers. And Department of Arts and Culture, in addition to just writers, they don't seem to look at art as jobs,
Yeah.
despite the amount of revenue that we bring into the country. So we're taxed like full-time employees, but we're not able to access like loans to get a home and so forth and so on, you know.
Yeah.
That's one. Secondly, there is a level of uh, hierarchies of arts.
Yeah.
So there's music, you know. So you'll have a minister of arts and culture go to a literary festival. Um, no, sorry, they'll go to a music festival. They don't turn up at
Yeah.
a literature festival. They might go to a film festival. They might go to
Yeah.
Durban Film Festival, you know. I remember there was one year where Wole Soyinka was in the country and he was being hosted by Department of Arts and Culture, you know.
Yeah.
And the then Minister of Arts and Culture, didn't turn up for this gala dinner that was happening for Wole
Yeah.
Soyinka, the whole Nobel laureate.
Yes. Jesus.
And then
That's
the next day, the same Minister of Arts and Culture was in the newspaper,
mhm.
and he had been at the Durban July. He had been at the horses, type of thing. But part of the reason why I got into a space where I said I wanted to professionalize literature and be a writer and work on, literature adjacent stuff is precisely that. I wanted somebody, a young person who says they want to write. I wanted to say, well, you know what? I don't need to go and become an accountant.
Yeah.
There's Zukiswa, and she is a writer, and she's always been a writer.
Yeah. And so it's actually also a means of bringing making people more conscious of this as an actual choice, other than just a hobby or a pastime.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, I'm gonna try to find the difficult curve now. So first of all, thanks for giving us a bit of a better little window on your life.
Ah!
Sorry. Yeah, I think it's really nice to have a bit of a more of a view of what's going on in a person's life. And now for this kind of series of interviews which I want to do, one of the central ideas is that I have some general questions about empowerment, discrimination, and I would call it the cultural climate. And these questions I'm going to ask you and then try to actually kind of repeat these questions with other people to get this panoptical view on these kind of central issues. So hopefully there will be people from the African continent, from the American continent, etc. We'll see. It's step by step. But the first beginning of this, I would like to do with some kind of more light-hearted questions. And what I'm curious about in this beginning is like kind of your sources of inspiration. You've already named a few. And I was thinking in the first instance, maybe what could be called personal heroes or role models. Were there any such figures, who inspired you, who gave you impulses? And do you think that also kind of impacted your writing and identity?
Yay. Okay, that's a heavy one. And you said you were going to start with light stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that the other one is a bit, I could say, darker. This is on the light where the sunshiny
um,
side.
you know, Amadou Koroma, Amataidu, Wole Soyinka, and the writers, but in addition to that, I think one of the things that they did was social justice,
Yeah,
and that to me has always been, I'm not an artist for art's sake.
yeah,
I'm an artist because something I'm wanting to convey, there's something I want to question about the status quo, and
mm,
I've never been I've never been, and I will never claim to be an artist for art's sake.
mm,
I'm not that person. So um whether I convey it well, yeah, that's another story. But
yeah, yeah. No, it's for me when I'm almost 2/3 of the way through Men of the South, and for me, it's a very different kind of book from what I usually read in the sense of that I get a very deep sense of the society and of these cultural issues, especially, of course, of gender identity and of traditional roles of womanhood and manhood. And yeah, so for me, I had the sense that I got much more of a political flavor of what the situation might be like or is like in South Africa.
and it's a weird thing because my political friends tell me that I need to write more politics because my books are fluffy
Mm-hmm.
and they're not political enough. And I always joke to them that if you read them carefully, everything I say is political.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I personally, I have to really agree. And then taking this question maybe into the next level is you mentioned these different writers, and now I was thinking in terms of cultural inspiration, is there also, you know, certain books or movies or pieces of art that you think have significantly influenced your perspective and working?
It's a weird thing. I always mention two particular books by two white men uh, with that particular thing, and it's Orwell's Animal Farm and Huxley's A Brave New World, you
Yeah.
know. And, you know, I think if you've read those two particular books, you will particularly understand why I am who I am on whatever, because it's two extremes. It's one is what can happen when communism happens in a messed up way, and the other is what happens when capitalism happens in a messed up way, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, so and I always think, hey, that was insightful. There is another third book, which got me to write, and it's Shima Chinojo's Harvest of Thorns.
Mm-hmm.
Harvest of Thorns is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful book. And it's particularly relevant to the African continent because, and particularly Southern Africa, because, you know, the main character goes to war and he comes back. And when he comes back, he realizes that, you know, he's insignificant.
Yeah.
And when they got freedom, it would matter and stuff. And it kind of echoed Zex Mda's play, which is very, 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 very beautiful. Zex Mda had a play that he wrote in 1978, I think it was, or 1977, or that came out in 1977, first performed in 1977-78. And the play was We Shall Sing for the Fatherland.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen it performed, and essentially post South African democracy, which was how transient was. You have a bunch of you have a couple of soldiers, you know,
Yeah.
who were, well, they were like members of the military organization or whatever, like the armed wing, you know.
Yeah.
So the Hamas of South
Yeah.
Africa,
The
MK.
resistance.
And they come back and they have these expectations, you know, of what's going to happen to their lives. And it doesn't quite happen like that, you know. And it's interesting because I watched the performance of We Shall Sing for Fatherland way, 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 way after I had read Harvest of Thorns by Shima Chinojo from Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether Shima Chinojo even watched or read We Shall Sing for the Fatherland, the play, you know.
Yeah.
But it was just like, to me, they spoke to each other, you know.
Yeah.
That there's pieces of art that speak to each other, and this is essentially where I'm saying, like, you know, it always starts with a story. So even when it goes on stage, it starts with a story, you know. But we don't all need to be novelists.
Yeah, one has to be able to discover one's niche, so to speak, where one can thrive. Yeah, and actually, as you were describing Harvest of Thorns and the other one, I was also reminded of what I'm now, the novel I'm reading of yours, with this clash between the individual ideals, but then when they meet social reality, it's obviously gonna be a huge
Exactly.
conflict. and that is very interesting to see how it plays out. I'm gonna move on one question, and I was thinking from the biography, you've told us Hawaii, UK, and also certain, I think, well, obviously you've been Switzerland and also certain exchanges, I think, with Germany. So I was thinking, in your travels and your writings and your studies, have you encountered maybe, other cultural practices or other cultural traditions that have kind of deeply impressed you, and how so?
No, man, Temba, I'm an atheist for a reason.
Hmm.
I think basically people love and laugh and hurt and hate, and they want to be treated with dignity, you know,
Yeah,
wherever they are. So essentially, if I go to a rural area and they are uncomfortable with me being a certain way, I'm going to not disrespect them. I'm not
yeah,
conforming, by the way. It's just I need to respect them, you know. So when I was in Hargeisa a few years ago,
yeah,
you know, because they expect women to cover up, I
yeah,
covered up. I was okay. I wasn't, to me, that wasn't the political statement I needed to make, you
yeah,
know. The political statement I was there to make was bringing literacy to people,
yeah,
you know. So no, I haven't seen anything that I'm like, oh wow, oh no, oh you know.
yeah,
Uh, um, I really understand that people love love, you know. I do obviously look at it constantly with a feminist lens, and I realize whatever cultures that I encounter, women are treated um as lesser than
yeah.
everybody else. So there is that.
Yeah, that is actually an unfortunate constant across
Across
the
the world. I've seen
yeah,
it I've seen it everywhere. I've seen it in the same way. I don't admire writers. I admire their piece of literature. I
yeah,
don't admire any artist. I admire their piece of art.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, that's the way I engage with the world.
yeah,
Constantly, because if you fail Temba, I still
yeah.
want to say I like what Temba did there.
Yeah, it's not attached to the person necessarily. Can now I would like to change to the darker, well, not actually darker side, but maybe to the bit more more difficult side. And I'm kind of interested, for you as a Black woman living in South Africa, living in Kenya, living in Hawaii, the UK. What were your earliest experiences with discrimination, and what kind of effects do you think it had on your emotions and thinking and self-image?
I I grew up in Zim,
Mm,
and I had a friend called Charmaine, and when I was in primary school,
yeah,
and I've recounted this story quite a bit. I had a friend called Charmaine when I was a kid, and Charmaine always used to come. She was white, and she always used to come to our house, you know,
yeah,
and we'd hang out, and we'd go into my mom's bedroom, and we'd do makeup and so forth and so on, you know,
yeah,
type of thing. And she could open a fridge and take whatever food she wanted, etc., etc.
yeah,
And then one day I went to Charmaine's house, you know, and I would generally go to Charmaine's house. I'd go to Charmaine's house, and generally I'd stand at the gate, you
yeah,
know, say, ah, Charmaine, and then she'd come out, and then we'd go to my house. I'd actually never been to her house.
yeah,
And So this one day I got there, and she had two brothers. She had Pierre and Mike. And Pierre was very blatantly anti-black, but Michael was very sweet, you know. And I got to the gates, and I got to the gate the same time Michael was getting there. And I said, "Oh, hi, Michael. Can you go and call Charmaine for me?" And they said, "Oh, yeah, sure." And he went into the house, and he yelled out, and I heard him, and he said, "Charmaine, your Kappa friend is here."
Oh God.
Right? And Charmaine's mom said to Michael, "Can you rush out and she probably heard you. Can you rush out and apologize?"
Yeah.
So it wasn't, "Can you apologize because you're never supposed to say this word," but it was, "Can you apologize because she might have heard you."
Yeah,
And then
maintain appearance.
Before he came, Charmaine ran out and said, "Zooks, if Michael comes and says sorry, just tell him it's okay." And I said, "What is he saying sorry for?" No, just tell him it's okay." And at that point, realized Charmaine wasn't my friend, you know. And so that's one. There was more recently.
Did you feel it had quite a impact on you, this episode? I mean, you know,
very impactful. That's the reason why I still recount it. I was 10 years old. No, I wasn't 10. I was 12 actually. That's the reason why I still recount it.
You must have been very sad at the time.
No, I was, but this was somebody I thought was like one of my closest friends. She stayed like literally like 200 meters from my house. She would come to our house all the time. We'd open the fridge. She'd have like sandwiches in our house and stuff and everything. And when you look at things in retrospect, her dad was a plumber, but he had a townhouse in a very posh, it was poshish neighborhood, you know. He had a townhouse there, but I can't even, like when I think back now, I can't think of a Black person in Zimbabwe who is a plumber having a house in the same neighborhood. You get, you know. So you realize then that, oh my God, this guy, how much are people paying him? You know, when they're selling a house, they'll say, "Oh, can you get Mr. A's and da da da?" And he comes in, and how much does he charge? How does he afford to stay in this place when he's just a plumber? You get, you know. So no, and then I think more recently, which was kind of funny, was I think it was 2014, and I was in the UK, and I went to Northampton to see a friend of mine, and she said, "Oh, you know, my friend has invited me to a party." And to, you know, and because her child's best friend at creche is having a birthday party. And I said, "Okay," and said, let me call her and I see whether you can join us." And I said, "Fantastic." And so she had a child, Natalia, you know, and Natalia had a friend from kindergarten. And they become friends because Natalia met this young woman also in creche and said, "Oh, you know, my dad is from South Africa, you know, as well." And it's like, "Oh, you know how these things go in preschool." So they became friends. But Natalia's mom, Natasha, was British, and she had been pregnant when she met, and weirdly enough, his name was Temba. When she met Temba, and Temba adopted Natalia. So Natalia is a white kid,
Yeah.
right? But this kid has told her best friend in preschool that my dad is South African, you know.
Yeah.
So there's the assumption, oh, okay, you know. So anyway, they'd never met Temba because Temba worked in Southampton.
Mm.
Anyway, so the birthday party is happening, and I say to Temba, oh, why don't you come, bruh? You know, it would be lovely to meet you. And Natasha says, yeah, you'd love Temba. Yeah, you guys can vibe and stuff. Great, another South African, you know. So Temba drives. He generally comes on the weekends and stuff. In this particular situation, he drives up, but we get to the party because we send him the GPS and we're already there. We send him. No, at that time we didn't send GPS in the UK. People just sent the postcode, the code, and that's how. Yeah, the code. So we sent him a code, and we're like, and we had arrived there earlier, and I think they were taken aback that Abigail and I were like these two black girls, because when Natasha said she was bringing two friends and they said, yeah, I don't think they expected that to be black. But they were nice. They were nice about it. And, you know, they even had Castle Lights, which was great because I love Castle Lights. You know, so we're having South African beer. And then Temba arrived and Natalia ran. She was like, Daddy, 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 you know, and Daddy came and lifted up my baby, you know. And this young woman, this young girl who was Natalia's best friend, said, Natalie, you didn't tell me your daddy's a Kaffir. But he's a kid who was born in the UK. So therefore, this child could not have learned it in South Africa. This child learned it from the parents. It was very jarring. So at that point in time, we all looked at each other and we decided we were going to leave. I did, for my sins, go to the fridge and get 2 more Castle Lights before I left.
Yeah, you made it worth the trip. Yeah.
You know?
So actually, we find this kind of racial thinking pervading. That's, I think, also the very unfortunate part when it pervades all the way down to the kids, because usually often the kids are not yet as encumbered with these kind of stereotypes.
Exactly.
And then to see it with the kids, to me, it's especially disheartening, I think.
It's jarring.
Yeah.
It's jarring.
And so staying on this topic, but so to speak, the reverse side of the medal, instead of discrimination and racism, I was thinking of what were your first encounters with a sense of empowerment? What, people or activities did this include where you had this feeling that, you have things in your own power, so to speak. Yeah, empowerment.
My parents have always, my dad passed away in 2003. Parents have always I'm an only child, and they've always told me that, they've given me essence. They've given me, when I was a kid, my dad and my mom would have like all these like big political players or big academics or big artists in the house. And they never told me to get out of the place. They always say to me, they always allowed me into the space. And so these aunts and uncles of mine that I grew up with would they because of my parents, they always engaged with me, not as a child, but they engaged with me from an intellectual perspective, which was beautiful because it made me like broaden my horizons even when I was a young kid. My mom doesn't drink, but she used to host a lot.
Yeah.
She loves cooking, to host people, and she loves that. And so they would be in the house, and then they'd say something. And I remember having a debate as a child after I just read Animal Farm, actually, weirdly enough, with Uncle Kempton, you know, about communism. And he was about socialism, actually. And he was as a political thought.
Yeah.
And he was crushing me. He wasn't crushing me as a child. He was crushing me as an intellectual nemesis, which was beautiful, because it was essentially was saying to me, think harder about what you just said. Question yourself. So beautiful. And the adults in my life were constantly like that. And so I try to do that with my son, but I try to do that with my friends' kids, where I'm like, when they say, yeah, this and this, and I'm like, no, but can you look at it from this perspective and stuff? And I never infantilize them, because it's important to look at kids as really grown, thinking human beings and stuff, because we shape them.
Yeah. Yeah, I very much agree this, because I'm a secondary school teacher, and I also find myself often challenging students in the sense of like just having a second look at their arguments. But if the kids have been not so exposed to this kind of thing, you can tell it's difficult, that they struggle. And it's also, I think it makes it harder to absorb new material. You mentioned earlier also feminism, or feminist thinking and action. I was thinking, when and how did that aspect enter into your life and work?
I think it has been there, like on the whatever. Again, I really must credit my mother for it, because my mom was the type of mom who would question her brother, if she felt that he was mistreating his wife, or that type of thing. My mom was always like that, and it was such an anomaly, because generally women, when I grew up, always sided with their family members and stuff. My grandmother also was amazing, but my mom was born of like 7 sisters, and all my aunts are absolutely, they've been mothers to me. So my mom and her sisters just were those women, and my grandmother was absolutely, my maternal grandmother was the most amazing woman, who would just like like, and it was funny, because my grandfather didn't drink and my maternal grandmother drank. And then she'd just like speak like, dude, what type of thing, right? And I'm like, oh.
So you had many role models then to get the proper idea of.
And then, I mean, of course, in my adulthood, I really like one of my, there's a friend of mine, Kina Likimani, and her mom, Amataidu, who died last year, like has been like a mother to me, She's like, but a literary mother, She constantly is like, she was constantly like, I'd be like, yeah, I'd call her and we'd have like 2-hour-long chats and stuff. So she was gorgeous, and I miss her every day. So I think my biggest losses last year was Eusebius Makaiser dying and Ama Ataidu dying. I was like, oh, that,
No, I'm sorry to hear that. That's Especially if they have, sorry, I have to change the battery. Especially if they have been such an inspiring part of your life for so long, it makes it very difficult. Sorry?
We have the memories, so there's that.
Yes.